There's certainly no villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe just like Loki when it comes to charm. The character, who is set to appear in his own TV series, is known for committing numerous acts of deceit in order to further his goals and for outsmarting others by his devious schemes. Due to a mixture of Loki's mischievous deeds and his ability to trick his enemies into falling into his traps, he has earned the title of God of Mischief. There are a few moments in the MCU that better showcase the trickster's talent for anarchy and disrupting the structure, and it's worth seeing them before seeing his solo sequence. Loki, Loki's biological father, had been fighting Odin for thousands of years before falling into Loki's pit and dying at his side. Loki accomplished this by convincing Loki that he was negotiating a bargain for Odin's life and granting him access to Odin's chamber in order to murder him. He then used Gungnir to target Loki, who was helpless against the deceit and was eventually blown to bits by the son he had once deserted. The only concern with this situation was that it left Jotunheim without a king and plunged the world into confusion. By persuading Thor to attack Jotunheim, Loki plunged the Asgardian succession into disarray. He persuaded Thor that he was on his brother's side in an attempt to attack the Frost Giants, encouraging him to carry it out, ultimately leading to a war between Jotunheim and Asgard. Loki's act cost Thor his place as the heir apparent to Asgard's throne, as well as splitting Odin and Frigga's spirits, which he used to usurp the throne. Loki achieved ultimate catastrophe with only one hint in Thor's ear. Loki's followers adore his bizarre logic, which lead him to do absurd things, since assuming the guise of Odin, he went even further by commissioning statues of himself and positioning them around Asgard to make it look as if Odin was honoring Loki. To feed his ego, Loki had the play The Tragedy of Loki of Asgard approved. However, as the Asgardians started to see Loki as a sad character, they dismissed Thor's arrival in favor of watching the action. If one were to ask Loki, he would undoubtedly say that he is superior to Thor in terms of talent and tactics. Loki's duplicity was on show at the end of Thor when he convinced Eric Selvig to agree to harness the Tesseract's force. This was his way of ensuring that Selvig kept exploring the Tesseract before Loki could be summoned, as he did in the Avengers when he came to fully smash the base and seize the cube. Despite the fact that some contend that Loki's assault on Thanos was illogical, he was successful in carrying out his strategy for the Titan. His strategy was to convince Thanos that he was on his side, then dupe him into accepting the Tesseract's appeal and unleashing the Hulk on him. As a result, the Hulk was able to mount a surprise assault on Thanos. Of course, Loki had no idea how strong Thanos was, but there's no denying that he duped the Mad Titan into falling into his trap. As Thor stood there admiring the serpent, Loki showed himself to be the snake all along and stabbed his elder brother. Although this was ignored as a joke, the fact that he was so devious at the age of 8 just contributes to his image as the God of Mischief. Although it might seem that Loki's big show of strength in Stuttgart was excessive, his true fans understand how his pride works. Loki took over a public space in order to rule over the residents and compel them to kneel before him. His ultimate goal was to be caught there, but this was also a devious way for Loki to claim superiority by making a spectacle of everyone submitting to his authority. He also beat up Captain America to show how their hero was just a man, while he was a god to the rest of the world. In the Avengers, it seemed as if Iron Man had battered Loki into submission, except for Loki's plot to be uncovered. He decided to get to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s base so he could launch a war with the Avengers over what to do with him, while letting Hawkeye kill the helicarrier from the outside. When the Avengers were overwhelmed by their infighting, Bruce Banner transformed into the Hulk. After it was all said and done, Loki had escaped with both the scepter and the Tesseract, and the helicarrier was on the brink of falling to the ground. This is Loki's strongest and worst attribute, based on who it preferred. He had perfected the art of making illusions of himself, to the point that he feigned his own death by destroying his copy and fleeing in reality. Loki used it in fights as well, as he took several versions of himself to the Bifrost Bridge during his fight with Thor to confuse his brother, who didn't know which Loki was real. Each time Loki cast these illusions, he managed to stir things up, which Thor finally learned was his go-to step. Nobody can combine malevolence and mischief quite like Loki, who used the Battle of New York to demonstrate how he had defeated Earth's mightiest heroes. In some cases, it was just a major joke gone horribly wrong. The Earth was at Loki's hands after the Battle of New York, with only the arrival of the Avengers forcing Loki's hopes to go away. Loki would have been king of Earth if it had not been for them, and the whole war would have become his coronation.